Hi, welcome to part 2 of our study of the Ten Commandments. So we left off at the third commandment. So the third commandment's pretty short, but it's pretty important, isn't it? It's the one that says, "You shall not make wrongful use of the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not acquit anyone who misuses his name." I think in other translations you're more familiar with. This is from the New Oxford Annotated Bible. You might have heard it rendered something like this: "Don't take the Lord's name in vain." Vain, vanity, for selfish purposes. So on the surface, this is a prohibition against using God's name. And in some circles in Judaism, in Orthodox Judaism, for example, the name of God, the name that God gave to Moses, Yahweh, is such a sacred name that it is not to be uttered out loud. And so, yes, we are talking about the power of words here. But isn't it curious that we're not even down to murder yet? I mean, if this is the top 10, really using God's name like cussing is high priority sin? Well, of course there are layers, right? So it's also often taught in Judaism, and it's right here in the way this good translation does it, that you shall not make wrongful use of the name of the Lord your God, carrying God into your evil, essentially. So committing murder, for example, is one thing. That's a horrible sin in this tradition, a horrible crime, punishable by death in the Torah. And if you commit murder out of your own passion, your own greed, your own rage, that's one thing. But if you commit murder in God's name, you are making use of God's name in an evil way. You are carrying God into your evil. And that, it seems, is what is the truer, deeper sense of the third commandment. God is saying, look, if you're going to do evil, leave me out of it. So this raises all kinds of rich questions about horrific sins committed in some misguided sense that this is God's will. It brings to mind Augustine's grappling with the question of what is just war. Is there such a thing as just war? Of course, self-defense, to keep yourself alive, that's one thing. But killing people for your own reasons or on behalf of God, or committing other heinous crimes in your misconception of what God wants you to do, is, I think, most clearly what the third commandment is about, not just about saying the word God. The fourth one is about the Sabbath. Let me read it to you. "Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. You shall not do any work, you, your male or female slave, your livestock, or the alien residents in your towns. For in 6 days," and here's the reason, right? "For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, but rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath and consecrated it." The first holy thing, the first sanctified thing in the creation, way back in Genesis, was the Sabbath. And as Abraham Joshua Heschel puts it, it is not the Jews who have kept the Sabbath, it is the Sabbath that has kept the Jews. What a radical idea, to take one idea out of to take one day out of 7 and say, on that one day, we are going to pull back from the busyness of doing and focus wholly and entirely on being. And so in classic traditional Jewish families, the Sabbath is, of course, on Saturday. And in Jewish timekeeping, the day begins at sunset. So Friday sunset is when the Sabbath begins, all the way until Saturday at sunset. And again, depending on how observant a individual Jewish person or family might be, they would participate in various levels of intensity with withdrawing from the world, not using money, not using machinery, walking instead of using the car, not shopping, going to synagogue, of course, praying, studying, but also connecting with the people we say we value the most, our spouses, our children, our families, and to just drink in the beauty and the joy of being alive. You know, all that stuff you work for so hard the other 6 days. I think it's just really a wonderful idea to build into your schedule downtime. I know we all recognize the value of that. I have some friends who take a tech Sabbath. You know, every Saturday night they unplug all their devices and go offline until Monday morning. Take a nice long 24, 36-hour period of no screens, no technology. You and I all have to, I think, navigate this on our own and figure out how we are going to reap the benefit of this very potent idea that when you take periods of rest, guess what? You're not less productive. You're more productive because you have more energy, more focus, more restored power when you do come back online, so to speak, and become that busy, productive, creative person that you are most of the time. So the Sabbath is a rich contribution, I think, to all of us from Jewish culture. Number 5 is honor your father and mother, so that your days may be long in the land which the Lord your God gives you. Honor your father and mother. Doesn't say love. Certainly doesn't say obey. Honor is a very rich word. And obey is a bad fit because what if your parents issue an immoral command? What if they command you to help them commit a murder or rob a bank? Then clearly honoring your father and mother would look quite different in that hypothetical, wouldn't it? If your father wanted you to help him rob a bank, how might you honor him? By trying to talk him out of it. By maybe even calling the police on him as he drives away to go commit this crime. Because your moral obligation is to the community. Just because you're someone's child, you're not a slave to those people. They don't own you. They can't issue blanket commands to which you are completely bound. You and I and all human beings are made in God's image, are moral agents with free will. And I honor my mother and father when I live in accord with law, in accord with mercy, in accord with justice. In fact, honoring my father and mother ends up having nothing to do with obedience. In the deepest sense, I honor my father and mother by becoming the best version of myself that I can be, by cultivating the seeds of potential within me. I mean, this is what every parent wants, right? Every parent wants their children to thrive, to have big, wonderful lives, to be creative and to be moral and to be trustworthy and to be loving and to be kind and to contribute something powerful to the lives of others. When we get anywhere near those ideals, we are honoring our mother and father. Number 6, you shall not murder. I guess this is an easy one. Now, in the King James Version, it says, thou shalt not kill. But in Hebrew Bible, translated into English, you get the proper word here. That's murder. Murder is different than killing. It doesn't make any sense for God to suddenly say, oh, don't kill. Because all through the Torah, he's not only sanctioning, he's commanding that we kill people, animals, under all kinds of different circumstances, war, capital punishment, and so on. So what does it mean to prohibit murder? Murder is a certain category. It's a subcategory of killing. Murder is selfish. It's not for just reasons. Nobody benefits except our own ego. We want to kill someone for money or for rivalry or for rage, whatever the reasons are. But murder is an egoic act. It's about self-serving, not serving God or the community or others. So it is, of course, a horrific taboo in almost all cultures. And here it is codified in the Ten Commandments. Number 7 is, you shall not commit adultery. Now, this, of course, gets at the heart of marriage, that a marriage is a covenant that can be broken by either party. And so adultery is a lie, isn't it? It's a violation of the covenant, and it's fundamentally egoic. It's about manipulating your spouse by deceiving them so that you and your own egoic craving can get what you want. It's clearly brutally destructive to the spouse that's being lied to the children, and to the agent who is committing the deception. It doesn't do them any good either. It's a disease of the ego. So on the surface, it's the breaking of a contract, but on a deeper level, it's soul destruction. And it gets back to our question that we asked last time, or a couple times ago. Is the law about restricting freedom or about making real freedom possible? And these boundaries, don't commit adultery, don't murder, they are really about enriching our lives, not binding us in all these unreasonable control systems. The next couple of commandments drive that point home even further. Number 8, you shall not steal. Yeah, I don't think God really is that concerned about property rights, but what begins to happen in a community beset by theft is that we all lose trust with each other. We build walls and we fear one another, and we become covetous, we'll get to that one in a minute, of our property beyond reasonable bounds. So in a community in which theft becomes commonplace, we live in a community that does not respect itself, in which none of us can feel safe. And again, the quality of life, the beauty of life is deeply eroded. Number 9, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Telling lies, even gossiping, is considered false witness, because you don't know if that thing that you heard is true, but you're willing to share it, even if it assassinates someone's character in the court of public opinion. And so bearing false witness is another deeply corrosive, destructive act to the health and wholeness of the community. Jewish values are all about upholding the dignity of the individual, upholding the dignity of the family, and thereby upholding the dignity of the community. Fairness, law, reasonable constraints on destructive instinctual drives in order for other people to move safely through my street and safely through the halls of my mind. Number 10, you shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or male or female slave, or ox, or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. Coveting, a pointed word, a kind of old-fashioned word for pathological craving, burning envy. There's something Buddhist about this 10th commandment. It reminds me of the second noble truth of Buddhism, the idea that my suffering is inflamed by my craving. And look at how they put it here in the 10th commandment, that when you covet what your neighbor has, you are no longer seeing the world truthfully. You've looked right past your house, your possessions, and you're basically saying to God, I don't feel grateful for anything that I have. I want what that guy has. So coveting robs us of the consciousness of gratitude, the consciousness of joy for whatever abundance we are currently experiencing ourselves. And the way the rabbis put it is, if you are caught in the consciousness of coveting, you are basically saying to God, God, I won't love you unless you give me what my neighbor has. I have no gratitude and I have no love for you. So the consciousness of coveting cuts us off from our neighbor. It cuts us off from God. It sentences us to a kind of purgatory of meanness and superficiality. The opposite of the consciousness of coveting is the consciousness of gratitude and abundance. So look at how these 10 commandments paint a picture and help us answer that question. What is law for? Are the 10 commandments a restriction of human freedom, or are they not in fact, and I think you know where Judaism comes down on this, are the 10 commandments not in fact a formula for achieving a richer and more abundant and more boundless freedom and joy? Show me the lying, coveting, murdering, thieving adulterer who is happy and free in her or his heart. You're not going to find it. So the Jewish law seems to be about external behaviors, but when you midrash with it, when you sit and interpret it more deeply, you quickly see that just as much as Buddhism did, Judaism is really about the self-regulation of consciousness, getting my thought system right so that I interact with the external world correctly also.